There is an artist named Paloma who is from the UK, if I saw correctly. She's a singer-songwriter who draws inspiration from mythology, art history, and the Romantics. And she has a song out that I've been intrigued by, put out a year ago, over 39 million views, called Labor. So I'm going to check it out. If you're new, we're all about music and psychology. I'm your hostess, Rosalie Elliott. Subscribe, and here we go.
Why are you hanging on so tight to the rope that I'm hanging from? Off this island, this was an escape plan.
I love her voice.
Carefully timed it, so let me go.
I love the
And dive into
transitions.
the waves below. Who turns the oars? Who fixes up the cables? Emotional torture from the head of your high table. Who fetches the water from the Rocky Mountain spring and walk back down again to feel your words and their sharp sting? And I'm getting fucking tired. The capillaries in my eyes are bursting. If all love died, would that be the worst thing? For somebody I thought was my savior, sure make me do a whole lot of labor. The callous skin on my hands is cracking. If our love ends, would that be a bad thing? And the silence haunts our bed chamber. You make me do too much labor.
Makes me think of that idea of labor of love, right? You're laboring away, you're working, you're doing all the work. And she's saying, would it be such a bad thing if our love dies? Because for all of this, you're sure making me do a lot of labor, a lot of work. I love the romantic feeling and that nod to history and to romance that she has in her music video. I love the voice, that softness, that almost whispery element at times, the subtle yodel. I love how the vocal range that she has, how she switches back and forth, typing into those lower notes, going back into the high notes. A very beautiful voice, a subtle little rasp. I love it. Beautiful. And great storytelling too. The music video and the lyrics. That sigh, I can relate. Just as, that feeling of exhaustion.
Apologies for my tongue. I never used. Busy lapping from flowing cup and stabbing with your fork.
Takes all of it for himself.
Unweaponized, the false incompetence, its dominance under a guy. If we had a daughter, I'd watch and could not save her. The emotional torture from the head of your high table. She'd do what you taught her. She'd meet the same cruel fate. So now I've gotta run so I can undo this mistake. At least I've gotta try. The capillaries in my eyes are bursting. If our love died, would that be the worst thing? For somebody I thought was my savior, sure make me do a whole lot of labor. The callous skin on my hands is cracking. If our love ends, would that be a bad thing? And the silence haunts our bed chamber. You make me do too much labor. All day, every day, therapist, mother maid, nymph, then a virgin, nurse, then a servant, just an appendage, live to attend him so that he never lifts a finger. 24/7 baby machine, so he can live out his picket fence dreams. It's not an act of love if you make her. You make me do too much labor. All day, every day, therapist, mother maid, nymph, then a virgin, nurse, then a servant, just an appendage, live to attend him so that he never lifts a finger. 24/7 baby machine, so he can live out his picket fence dreams. It's not an act of love if you make her. You make me do too much labor. The capillaries in your eyes are bursting. If I love her, I understand it's bursting. Just an appendage, live to a savior, sure that he never a whole lot of labor. 24/7 baby machine, so he can live out and his picket fence dreams. It's not a silence or something shaker. You make me do too much labor.
That was amazing. Hell yes. That was awesome. Okay, listen. Before some of you guys are like, feminists, get out of here. There is a time and a place for everything. And just as much as I am all for Dax's song To Be a Man and looking at the man's perspective and standing up for the man or against toxic femininity or, showing that men should have a freedom to express what they go through. And we validate that and we should be willing to learn. There is a time and a place for also to do this for the women. And this song is what that's about, I think, because this is some women's experience. Not all. It's not my experience, thank God. But I could relate to the feeling of laboring away, wearing all kinds of hats. And before we make this into a man versus woman battle, because for some reason we have this tendency to want to always take sides, right? You got a post that's more for the men and the women come out of the bushes going, what about me? What about us? And then you have a post about women and the men go, what about us? And then you have the kids and the adults and the singles and the married. And we have this tendency to go, what about me? What about me? And for some reason, we forget sometimes that there is a time and a place for everything and that not every song will encompass every conversation. Not everything can be about everything. Nothing is, okay? Well, you get my point, okay? There's a time for everything. And a song meant to encourage men and to shed light on their plight should not now become weaponized by women. For women to go, well, what about us? And there's also many who have this and this experience. In that moment, it was about the men. In this moment, let it be about the women. Let it be about things that women experience. We're not talking right now about, a man's perspective. We're talking about a woman's perspective who is shedding a light on a story or painting a picture here, a story here, and doing so very beautifully, aesthetically, in my opinion, the romantic, that nod to history, the old and the antique and the vintage. And it paints a picture that is pleasant to look at, in my opinion. It paints this picture also and this is how I'm interpreting it, this is also what history has looked like for many women. So making it all a little bit more old school, for lack of a better word, dapping into some of the nostalgia, to me, it may also be this nod to history of dynamics between men and women and the responsibilities and expectations. And if you agree or not, but when we look at history, we can see that a lot of certain behaviors and mindsets towards women were simply ingrained in society. And it's been changing. And yes, we have this tendency to then go to other extremes, but that's just how we operate as humans. We're constantly evolving. We're human beings, and we swing back and forth in that pendulum. But there was a time where a lot of women's reality was being looked at or being treated as more of an accessory, more a baby machine or whatnot. And so there's a time and a place for this song and this message where even today, some women are experiencing this, where they don't feel loved or seen and they feel like they're just slaving away and they're expected to be both nymph and virgin, right? You're supposed to be a freak in the sheets and you're supposed to be sexy, and many women who have experienced hurt because of men who have been unfaithful or who have gone to pornography and other things and lusted after a standard that is unrealistic, that a woman can't meet, who now feels less than because her body's changed and she's had a bunch of babies and she doesn't look like what the world would lie to her about that she's supposed to look like. And so she's expected to be this nymph and be adventurous and fun, but at the same time a virgin and innocent and pure. She's expected to be a baby machine and the therapist and the mother. And this song, I think, sheds light on all the hard work that goes into wearing all those hats. And in this case, being in a relationship with someone who is just taking and taking. He takes the big piece of meat, of turkey or bird or whatever that was, chicken, and he's eating it all for himself. Doesn't ask if she would like to have some. Doesn't wait on her in the sense of she's serving him. He's not serving her. She's bringing everything to him. He's not even waiting until she fills her plate. He's just taking and taking and taking, looking at her with arrogance and with disdain. And then there was an interesting facial expression in the end as she was starting to eat the fruit, or was it the meat and the blood? I don't know if it was just fruit or blood from the actual meat, but it looked gory and it looked gross. And at first, as she was getting a little wild with it, he almost had this excited smirk. It was almost like he liked where, the playfulness, and he liked her being the nymph and the maybe a little bit of the temptress. And suddenly, as she keeps feeding off of whatever was causing all the red, he starts changing his demeanor and his expression goes from excitement and curiosity to that of disdain and being displeased with how she is behaving and how she's taking and eating and partaking, and her reaching a point of just F it. And we all have that, right? Where if you don't feel appreciated, you feel like you're just pouring out, you're not getting that back. And I know that might not be the reality. So before some of you guys get defensive, try to be honest with yourself. If this doesn't apply to you, both as a woman or man, and you're not someone who is taking and making your spouse or the people in your life feel less than, then this doesn't apply to you, and there's no need to get defensive. Those who really get defensive about this type of stuff, they may have to ask themselves, well, is there something to this? Is this something that I've been accused of? Have loved ones in my life told me that this is how I make them feel? And if that's the case, then we have a whole other conversation to have. But this is some people's reality, where you have women who are giving and serving and taking care of the kids and wearing all the hats and also trying to bring in money and also trying to do all the things. And they are in a relationship with someone who is more focused on taking and coming and going as he pleases and working on his hobbies, or, going out and not even being faithful, not practicing having covenant eyes to make her feel beautiful and seen. But she's supposed to be and perform. And so, in my opinion, the composition and the crescendo of it was dope. I liked how it was pulling me in more and more, and it was getting feistier and fiercer from a musical standpoint. The lyrics were beautiful in the sense of story painting. I love the whole medley in the end and the harmonies and how it coincided with one another. And then I also loved how the storytelling was fitting to, this is the experience of many people, and there needs to be a conversation about that too. And there needs to be a moment where a woman also gets to decide, who am I and who do I want to be? And at times she may need to get up and get away from that table. She may need to leave that table and say, enough is enough. It is not my job to be all things to everybody, especially if I'm not appreciated and it's not reciprocated. That is called healthy boundaries. And that's what always, I think, when it comes to psychology is so complex, because you could have a song like Dax to be a man, where it sheds light on men's vulnerability and all the things they go through. And women may have a tendency to want to make that about themselves and need a loving reminder that, no, this was about the man and this is his experience. How can we show men that we appreciate them and respect them? How can we show empathy for their experience as a man in this world? But then there's also the other part of that conversation of many men who that song doesn't apply to, the song to be a man, because they're not actually just working hard trying to provide. They're actually being douchebags and buttholes. Then there's a song like this where some women need that empowerment and that reminder of, no, you're doing all this labor for nothing, and you don't deserve to be abused and neglected and played and used. And it is not your job to be all things at all times. Someone who really loves you will love all of you, even as your body has changed after having kids. Someone who loves you will practice loyalty and covenant eyes and choosing not to be swayed left and right, and be honorable and true and pure. And just as much, you may have women who go, oh, and feel empowered by this, and it doesn't apply to them because they actually have good men and they actually have a good life, but they're victimizing themselves. You know what I mean? Like, there's everything and they mama can apply here. It's case by case. There's no such thing as being able to say all women and all men or all kids and all parents. Everybody's life is different. But from a storytelling perspective, from a song perspective, it was catchy and fun to listen to. And from a sense of empowerment, I think there's a place for that story. There's a place of saying, we're not doing this no more. I'm getting up from this table. I thought it was cool. What do you think? Subscribe, and I'll see you on the next ride. Ayo.